Hey guys, welcome back to the Dodge That Bullet podcast. This is Adam Stark. We've been on a little bit of hiatus for a little while. Nothing too serious, just world's crazy right now, y'all. Not a lot of time for podcasting, a lot going on, but we are back with a new episode. And me and Isaac Gauvey will be joined by Isaac's co-host on the Two Sides of Everything podcast, Vicki. Their podcast drops usually on Fridays. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, wherever. But good stuff, good lighthearted conversation. Check it out. But this episode, we're going to be talking about what everybody else is talking about. We're going to be talking about Trump. We're going to be talking about the riots at the Capitol last week and just all the craziness, social media, just everything surrounding that. So wanted to give y'all a quick intro into this episode. We are doing this on a Zoom call, so there may be some delays between the responses, but just bear with us. COVID, crazy world, we're doing what we can. But thank y'all for listening, and here we go. I guess tonight the main topic that we were going to start out with was just all the craziness going on with the Trump rally in D.C. on January the 6th. That was a week ago today, I believe. Just that followed by the march on the Capitol, the ensuing riots, the insurrection, as a lot of people are calling it. Just it's kind of been at the forefront of everybody's news cycle, especially the last 7 days. So I guess where it stands now, it looks like Democrats are pushing for Mike Pence, the vice president, to try to enact the 25th Amendment. Is that right?
That's what I understand. He would certainly let me sleep better at night. But, I don't know. Politics is always a dirty business. It always will be. I didn't like the fact of a person being the president, in my opinion, inciting people to rise up against their own government. I have two boys. And when I raise my boys, when they start as little kids, you dice up their food, you take care of them. As they get a little older, you say, watch out for cars when you're crossing the street. And you get a little older and you say, okay, don't be a bully and be careful, and you worry about college admissions and all this stuff. I never prepared my kids for insurrection.
That's true. That was not on the checklist of.
No, it wasn't on the checklist at all.
Yeah, Isaac, you want to jump in? Just kind of. Where your thoughts are at on all this. We've talked about it a little bit in text, and just go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like a young American. Not that either of you two are old, but I had to get a subtle jab in there. It's interesting because a lot of my peers, as much as you would think that almost they would see like a little bit of the gray area on both sides and try to understanding, a lot are either, really, really scared of what's going on in the government right now, and a lot of them are very much like, yeah, storm the Capitol. And I'm kind of somewhere like in the middle. And so it's just kind of crazy because I never thought that I feel like I'm living through like a textbook chapter, because I'm like the Great Plague of 2020, the civil unrest of 2021, the riots at the Capitol. Like, I don't know. It just kind of feels like I'm living in the 1920s. Like it's just kind of crazy.
It's like you stepped into adulthood and just fell straight off the edge, I mean, when you put
exactly.
it like that, that's kind of funny.
My first step off the bus of childhood was riding to a cow pie. Adulthood splat right there.
Yeah.
And so it's just been kind of crazy. I wanted to read the 25th Amendment since we kind of talked about it. And that is the 25th Amendment is for presidential disability and succession. I'm not going to read all the sections, but basically Section 1 just says, in case of the removal of the president from office or of his death or resignation, the vice president shall become president. whenever there is a vacancy in the office of vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take upon confirmation by majority of the House. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on. There's several other sections, but just so everybody was aware of what the 25th Amendment was for, if the president is deemed unfit to serve, then the vice president.
Well, he takes over government by committee.
Yes.
And then the problem comes in is that it's then up to the president to prove that if he uses the term insanity, he has to prove he's not insane, which looking over the last text for the last 6 months might be kind of difficult.
Well, I don't think Trump's sanity has ever been in question. I think we're all pretty sure that he's kind of nuts in a bag, but...
So, however, I have to say, with the watching the Capitol being stormed the other day, I certainly didn't take any fashion advice from these people
or dental care.
Oh my gosh, there's just not enough money spent on mental health in America.
Yeah. So, to be fair, like I will say up front, I'm a 2-time Trump voter. And the reason I supported his policies, and I don't feel like I'm backtracking here, because if you go back, I mean, we talked quite a bit. I know with James and Finch from Quitterant, like especially during like the Democratic primaries and stuff, we talked quite a bit about during this election cycle, just about different things. And we were open to the best candidate. You know, but I mean, just the things I believe in and the things I support, the more conservative side checks more of the boxes than the liberal side does for me. I mean, that's just that's the decisions I make as a voter. Now we can argue whether just how conservative a lot of the new Republicans really are anymore. You know, like a lot of people right now, they're feeling like.
I think knowing a lot of. Knowing a lot of conservatives, and I do. I mean, I live in Arkansas, right? I mean, yeah. Let's face it. No matter what happened last week, if we had an election tomorrow, Trump would still win. If out of this becomes a progressive party, you know, like where you have right-leaning liberals and left-leaning conservatives, you know, is that a bad thing?
Yeah, like more of a centrist party.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't think that from this situation. I think that there are sure-minded people who think, "Wow, we definitely have been too far left. We've also been too far right. Like, you know, let's meet back here in the middle." But with the things that happened at the Capitol, I mean, I think that for sure drove some people definitely more that direction, but also drove more people in the opposite direction and just running numbers.
Well, those people who stormed the Capitol, let's just put it perspective, they would have hung any of them. They didn't care if they were Republican or if they were Democrat. They would have hung any of them if they could have gotten their hands on them. Yeah, that's an insurrection. That has nothing to do with party politics.
Yeah, I mean, that's Isaac. What you said a while ago kind of struck a chord with me, because I think Vicki would kind of agree with me. Like we've seen the rise of like tribalism and the separation from one party to another. Like we've seen the divide grow over a number of years. And I mean, I would probably at least like say the last 10 or 12 years, it's just progressively gotten worse and worse and worse. And that's probably why we got to a point to where we got a guy like Trump in the White House, to where people like me may look at some of his policies and say, you know, and I'm talking more like economically, honestly, like, but we can look at that and say, okay, that's like the one thing out of all this stuff I see that I can kind of agree with. So I guess I'll go with that. But Isaac, what you said is it's kind of like you may have paid attention to it more when you were younger or in your teenage years or whatever. But this tribal, ultra partisan version of politics, like for you and people your age and in your age group, like that's all y'all know. Like that's all you see. That's what you think politics is and what it's supposed to be.
I think that comes a lot from the culture. I say the culture that we're raised in. Fortunately, Vicki and I have talked about this, and Stark, where I grew up, and we'll say like Arkansas as a whole, for the most part, I feel like we're just kind of like the majority of it are just nice people, I guess. And so like, I don't see a lot of like, for my generation, the tribalism stuff happening in our like local circle. But you're right. Everything that happens in a metropolitan area, think like LA, New York, Miami, places like that, you're either one way or you're another way. And so you're right. It's just crazy to think that like in my lifetime, I've never seen, for just sake of argument, both sides of the government, Republican, Democrat, work together. It's always been it's either Republican agenda or it's Democrat agenda. Vicki has the COVID. She's dying.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Let me just cough up a rat. No, now I'm better. It's that old emphysema thing, Cut it back to a pack a day.
Yeah.
Okay, Isaac. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm good.
But it is, like it is crazy that, all I've seen politically is, like you said, tribalism. There is no gray. And that's what is a struggle for me, because I don't know that I'm centrist, but I definitely think that there's a benefit from both sides of the coin. And just like, I don't know that anybody really thinks that anymore. Or there's so few people that understand that there's good and bad on both sides.
Or that laws are sausages. They're not
right.
They're not meant to be pure, clear cut. There has to be give and take. Since I'm the only adult in the room, way back in the day, when I was growing up, there was a lot more give and take when it came to politics, and they have historically equated that to World War II, because so many people served in World War II. They had a common battle, which was, where were you stationed during the war? I'm wondering if this insurrection that we're calling it will be that kind of conduit for the people in Congress now.
That's a really good. That's a good point, because you could kind of see that. Like I spent a lot of the evening last week when this happened, following this stuff, and they were covering Congress Live when they reconvened, and you could see guys like Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell. I mean, guys that and this could all be for publicity or just fronting for their party or whatever. But you would think these guys hate each other's guts, and they were in agreement on a lot of things, just as far as getting on with the business of Congress. Lindsey Graham's been a very polarizing figure. He's been a pretty staunch supporter of Donald Trump, and he was kind of
and of Hillary Clinton too, which was kind of weird.
That is weird.
He wrote an article for Time Magazine talking about how great Hillary Clinton was way back in the day. That was pretty funny.
That is hilarious. I'm gonna have to look that up. But he was kind of like playing to the room, and he was one of the guys that was expected to bring some type of an objection to the election results, and he just kind of threw his hands up. I think he even said, like, it's been a hell of a ride for me and Donald Trump, but it's time to move on, and
yeah, but where was he today? He was down at the wall with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Was he? I haven't seen. I saw a.
Yeah.
I saw a clip of just some of Trump's comments, but I didn't see who all was there with him. And I am.
He wasn't really conciliatory, now was he?
No, no, he wasn't. And I think he's burned his bridges. I think probably the plan was to just build some type of a media deal to where he could continue to push his agenda over the next 4 years and then run again in 2024. I think all this, there may still be some type of an attempt at that, but I think all of this has kind of squashed that for President Trump at the moment.
I remember somebody said the worst thing that ever happened to Donald Trump was becoming president, because he could have kept his people, his craziness going. He could have had his mega millions and whatever. I mean, now even Deutsche Bank, which is the only bank that ever loaned him money now, has said, forget it, we're out of here. All these major donors to the Republican Party are going, nope, not going to do that while he's in charge. That kind of thing. It's costing him more. And I'm not quite sure, and I hate to say it like this, but I'm not quite sure he realizes how much it's costing him.
Well, I don't think
Good Lord.
Costs him as much as it costs supporters of the Republican Party and also the members of the Republican Party. Because when Donald Trump leaves office, he's still going to be Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
He's still going to own Trump Tower. He's still going to have more money than he probably should. So I don't even know that it directly, a lot of people talk about like being president ages you. You look at President Obama, which granted he served 2 terms. But from when he was elected into office to when he got out, he physically looked a lot different. But I was looking at pictures of Trump the other day, and Donald Trump looks the exact same. And
To
I'm
be
not trying to say
fair,
that, like, he was not stressed during the job or go ahead, Sark.
I was just going to say, to be fair, you're talking about a dude that dyes his hair and wears 2 pounds of makeup.
That's true. But even then, he just does not look like the job has impacted him like it should. And I don't think it has. And I've said that since Trump got elected, is that he didn't do this to be president.
I don't think he did president to be president. He was on the golf course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He didn't. It's not like he wanted to be president. He just wanted to do it to say that he could.
Right.
And I just really don't think and that's what cracks me up a lot about people who are like, well, Donald Trump, he cares about the American people. He cares about the little man. Maybe.
No.
But I don't really think so, because he's Donald Trump and he cares about being a millionaire. But that's just my 2 cents.
I have a lot of hope for your generation, Isaac.
So, like, I kind of wonder, like, I've heard some people talk about this is the beginning of a revolution, and this is, like, they've just really I believe they've way overstated, like, exactly what got done the other day when these crazy people
Yahoos
invaded the Capitol, right? I mean, from my point of view, like, what did they really get done? Like, they ran around there and they raised a little hell, and yeah, they made it to the chamber and they took a few pictures and they trashed a couple of offices. But when security finally decided to throw them out, I mean, it didn't take them long to just get rid of them. So I'm kind of wondering, like, what did that? Yeah, it made headlines. It was a scene like we've never seen before. But, like, what did that really accomplish besides getting their face on camera and getting them in front of a judge?
Making us look like fools in an international setting. I mean, it was a meth head rebellion. You and I know that.
I mean,
and
that's a good way of putting it.
It wasn't ideology. It wasn't Republican or Democrat. It was meth head rebellion. And these yahoos, and I'm going to say them yahoos, they're, I was just happy not to see my relatives in it.
There was a guy from Arkansas.
Their trucks there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's because mine drive older cars. The thing is, they didn't do a whole lot, but it did show a culture class difference where, people talked about the riots that happened over the summer, and it's like, well, I thought it took them an awful lot of time to find a can of tear gas to get the people out of the Capitol or to slow them down. They didn't slow them down. It was just shocking to see how easy it was. You know what I mean? Just to take it over.
Yeah, well, we've seen the footage of them I don't know if it's because like parts of the Capitol are supposed to be a public space. I don't know if I'm not putting my conspiracy hat on. I don't know if they were told to let these people in. Like there's all kind of course, there's all kinds of like crazy information going on here.
So here's how the Capitol works.
Yeah, I've never been.
You can go anywhere. You can go anywhere on Capitol grounds that you want to. That's public space. So you can go into the House and the Senate when it's not in session. And you can go in session if you have an escort, but you have to make an appointment. So, but like outside, like on like what they call like the National Mall, so the Library of Congress, the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, you can go in all of those buildings or be out front of all of those buildings unless there is something going on. And Vicki and I had kind of talked about earlier while we were eating dinner. Last time I was in DC was in 2014, I think. And we were just kind of outside the Library of Congress, and a lady had set down a bag, like her camera bag, to go take a picture of the group she was with. And she took maybe like 5 steps away from this bag, and that's one thing they tell you never to do in DC, especially at a monument or a mall, because the terrorist type. And the Secret Service literally showed up, grabbed this woman, grabbed this bag, and they were out like in less than 30 seconds.
Really?
And we were talking earlier. Yeah, she was gone.
There's
no
cool.
way the president was in. Yeah, it was pretty cool, except we were terrified. But there's no way that the president was in D.C. At this time, or there's no way he was close to the Senate or House building, because Secret Service would have absolutely eliminated those people trying to get into the building. Like no questions asked, would have been grabbing people and bagging them.
He was there. I mean, but there's video of them back wherever they had the rally was at. I don't know if it was at the Washington Monument or what. I can't remember.
It was at the White House.
The rally was?
Yeah, well, the rally where he was encouraging them to go and fight for the country they wouldn't have.
Yeah,
right.
That was at the White House.
Yeah.
And he said he would go with them. He never did.
Right. They stayed behind and they were watching video inside a tent or something, weren't they? Or
yeah.
But you'll notice that none of the people at the White House tried to climb over the White House fence to storm it, because
no, that's how you get shot.
Like I said, exactly. Yeah. And so, but like Vicki said, these people they just walked in.
Yeah, they just walked
essentially
in. Yeah.
Or climbed the side and broke a window. And that's what's crazy to me, like as a kid, or even like anybody that goes through American public school, you're always taught that the Capitol is like a place where it's important. Things are important at the Capitol, and you just behave.
It's a solemn reflecting point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to see it, this is the patriotism, flag waving part of me. But kind of like Vicki said, I think we made an international fool. I say we collectively, an international fool of ourselves, because we took the only place where we are supposed to be able to civilly come together and settle our differences, and just acted like idiots. And that's for any group, not just what's happening now, but any group that stands out front, that marches on the Capitol, whatever. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't march on the Capitol. If these people would have stayed behind the barricade and just, had their Trump signs and waving their MAGA flags, whatever, that's fine. But the minute they hopped a barricade or were trying to storm, the House, we're trying to get in people's offices,
building the gallows behind, I think that's a little bit much. Yeah.
That's pretty tough for me, even as someone who leans more conservative. None of that was in the right. You don't have as many rights as you have. That was not. Now, okay, if we, the American people, were starving and we're on bread rations, and our politicians were, I don't know, eating cake for sake of historical accuracy, and there was a mob at the Capitol, and we stormed the Capitol, and we started chopping off people's heads because they were eating cake and we were only getting bread, I think that's justified.
Is it Young Guns too?
Vote
where Billy the Kid is in jail and the guy's over there eating cake?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you just made me think of.
And so, if we were in a serious oppression system where we were like the people were being held down, okay, yeah, sure, have a revolution. People do it all the time. But we're supporting a candidate who's in the middle of a recount. Why do you storm a building? What are you trying to do?
Well, see, I think part of the reason the conspiracy theories have caught on so much is because we aren't struggling. We aren't struggling for where our next meal is, or that we have shelter over us, or things like that. So we have time to let our minds wander, and that little walnut-sized fear button in our heads just goes everywhere.
I mean, I would kind of think, but if you listen to the news and you listen, I mean, I don't know how many people that are struggling had time or had the means to go to the Trump rally. You know what I mean? But people will tell you because of COVID, because of the lockdowns, because of the unemployment situation, like there are a lot of people struggling. And I can understand that,
But they weren't in D.C.
Right. I mean, I don't think that's what the point of that crowd was. So after all the craziness, after the grandstanding, in the middle of the night, Congress ratified the electoral votes. Joe Biden will be our next president officially. Here's what really bothers me too, kind of, I guess, just being like, what this did is there were so many things that people said like during this election cycle, like there won't be a peaceful what would you call it? Like my brain ain't working right now. Transition is the word that was escaping me. There won't be a peaceful transition of power. And during the election cycle, people would ask Trump about it, and I would be like, well, of course he's not going to say he would, because that would be like admitting defeat. And I mean, like, even the biggest Trump supporters they're going to say, yeah, this dude's like an egomaniac, right? So, but I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that was said kind of for political drama. But I mean, you really can't deny it. A lot of it came true. And I don't know how much of that stuff was like spoken into existence, just kind of following the script of how crazy all this stuff has been, from just the debates to the campaigning. It started with the campaigning, and then it worked its way up to the debates. And then, of course, everybody remembers how insane that first debate was, or just how cringeworthy. Like, that was as big an embarrassment as what happened at the Capitol. Like, if you want to talk about like just a public display of where our country is on the political spectrum. But it's kind of like it just worked itself up to this, and I mean, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right, Stark. I think a lot of it was spoken to existence, because we've had to do a recount before. That's not uncommon. That's fine, whatever. But this has never happened. There's never been so much just like, I hate to use the word like kindling, and like it was some sort of big like eruption. I guess it kind of was, but for like we said, for no reason. And honestly, I think if people would have just, well, and like you said, Stark, of course, Trump's not going to say, well, yeah, if it comes out and I lose, then I'll give up my seat, because no sitting president who has ran for a second term has ever wanted to be like, oh yeah, if I lose, I'll for sure step out, because that's just not what you do. And that's for anything. That's not just for president. That's for CEOs. That's for mayors. That's for any sort of office. But I think you're right, Sark, is, one side said, oh, there'll not be a peaceful transition. And then the other side was like, peaceful transition. Well, heck no, we want Trump to stay the president, so we're going to rally in numbers. And then
right. Well, we're going to win, so it doesn't matter.
Nervous, and the other side, exactly. One side kept getting more and more anxious, and it was just a big ball of just, I hate to use the word hurt feelings, but it just wasn't a combination of anything good. And unfortunately, it did escalate to what we witnessed, and gosh, it was just silly.
I feel like in this particular case, there's a lot of misinformation out there that people were more than willing to jump on. No election is ever certified before 10 days. And people were going, well, it better be right the night of. And it never is. There's nothing new with that. Mail-in voting, it's called absentee voting. We've been doing that for eons. We have systems in place. Well, they may know how a person votes and throw it out. No, they don't. They don't know how a person votes. We can't connect it to you specifically. The people judging whether a absentee vote is accepted or not have no idea how that person had voted. It's all these things that people were willing to say, well, it could happen, instead of, did it happen?
Well, and I think that's the conspiracy theory game, is you can't prove a conspiracy theory, but golly, you can make a lot of people believe stuff.
You can do a whole lot of podcasts about them too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And man, it's just crazy to think and there's my lifetime, there's never been what I'll call political rest. There's always been, party v party. I remember in 7th grade when it was Barack Obama v. Mitt Romney for his first term.
Is that his first term?
You're making me feel old. Continue.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Don't start.
It would have had to been. And we were in my mom's history. We were in our American history class during the election season. And so we talked about it. And, that wasn't so much the unrest, because we were in 7th grade. We really she was trying to encourage us to learn about the political system and how it worked. And so we did a little bit of research. But of course, all of us were like, well, Mitt Romney, because, well, that's just what our parents said. And the research that we did was in big groups, and it was, well, my dad said this, and my dad said that. Well, my mom said. And so our research was not really research. But I don't even call that political unrest. The only reason people were uneasy with that, because, of course, Barack Obama was our first African-American president. And that's why people were uneasy. Not, well, some people, I'm sure, because he was black, but not because he was black, but because people thought that the election would be rigged because he was black, or that he would get, sympathy votes, which is strange to me. And so that's the political unrest that I'm used to. But this almost felt like, and I hate to use the T word, but domestic terrorism. This was like these people were just a step away from, I don't think anybody went there with the intentions to harm.
Okay, the guys with the straps probably went there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had a political figure been harmed, I'm not 100% sure that it wouldn't have turned into something 1,000 times worse than it was. Yes, there were people injured. A Capitol police officer lost their life, which is tragic and so terrible.
What?
You talk about a revolution. A politician gets killed. That's something extra that nobody in that group was prepared to handle. But that's almost what it felt like. And it's I'm not one of those people who's scared of what's going on, but I know people who, my roommate's dad told her to pack a bag and make sure her car was always on full, not below half a tank, and have a go bag in case they needed it because stuff was going down. And I'm not one of those people, but there are people who are worried about that.
Are y'all going to have to make a run from Fayetteville or something?
Gonna bug out.
Well, I'm not. But, and that's just crazy. But that's what a lot of people think. on both sides. Some people are prepping for that because they're like, heck yeah, I'm ready for Civil War round 2.
Oh,
some
dude.
people are like, the new election. Like, it's Rosebud. Vicki grew up in Fort Ice, Whitehall, Pine Bluff.
I grew in Pine Bluff.
Pine Bluff, Watson Chapel, that area. So she gets Southern Arkansas stuff because we've discussed up here is not the South.
I'm used to gunshots. It's no big deal.
And so, like, it's funny because then people in the South will rise again, and they're raggedy old Fords, and like, it
ain't over. It ain't over.
Anyway,
yeah. Well, I kind of look at it like, see, this is where I find offense is that I've been in elections a long time. And if you don't know, I'm wearing Birkenstock, so that tells you a lot. But my party seldom wins in Arkansas. But I'm here to ensure that our elections are fair. I don't care who wins so much as that it's fair and done correctly. And people don't understand that. Mm-hmm. I also find it interesting that when Barack Obama was elected, I had people telling me, and this is a quote, "We're all going to hell because he was elected. Our culture, our government, our whole thing, we're all going to hell." I mean, hell was 2 syllables. When Trump is elected, he was selected by God. And then when Biden is elected, it is God is testing us. It's like, how do you rationalize that?
Back to hell.
Yep.
Well, that's another thing too, that, I mean, there is definitely like, I mean, there's Trump's following there's conservatives that are left with the choice of, this is our guy, I guess, and then there are just people that, some people would call it a cult. You worship at the Church of Trump or whatever. And there may be people that I'm pretty close to that hear me say that and might take some offense to it. I don't mean if you support Trump, you're in a cult, but there are people that take it to another extreme, to another level. That's kind of like the day before all this happened, there were some very important elections going on in Georgia. And I saw a thing and it basically dictated who controls the Senate. And I saw, I can't remember who said it or who tweeted it or whatever, but 300,000 people came out and voted in the general election for Trump that did not vote for the Republicans in the Georgia runoff. And I'm not like pointing fingers saying that's why I'm a Republican. This is why we lost the Senate. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying that shows you a difference and I know there's going to be fall off from a general election to a runoff election. And like Vicki, you said, you would expect that, like working in elections and volunteering or whatever role you play in all that. But that tells you right there, I mean, a number like that, just in one state, a 300,000 vote difference from in just a couple months shows you that there was a large number of people that come hell or high water, they were going to come out and they were going to vote for Trump. And then that's basically all they were educated on, because if they were that worried about then they would have voted in the runoff too,
Well, the interesting thing is when I do elections, and I'm one of those people that's out there helping people. I mean, if they need assistance, that's what we're there for. And we're not there to judge how they're voting. We don't tell them anything about it. We have no opinion. But if a person has a physical ailment or something that needs assistance with a ballot, we are authorized to step back there and help them with a witness. We're not just going back there rogue. When you step back there were quite a few that would say, I just want to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
And you press the button and you say, is this how you want to vote? And they say yes. And you go through the next ones and they're like, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. So, and you just go, okay. There's also that variety that just, I want to vote for the R. I don't care about anything else. And it's like, well, I have to read you every page anyway, and then they would say, is that person Republican? And you go, yes. And they say, okay, that's who I want. you just roll with the punches.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, across this country, most election officials are like that. I mean, we just want to get it done well and right. And people were going, well, they better get this right because third world countries invite us in to show them how to do elections. Well, the reason they do that is because we do them well.
And I'm sure there's people in other parts of the country that they're just there to vote against Trump, instead of
sure. Yeah.
But what's your opinion? I mean, I'm not saying the thing was rigged. Now, I've heard a lot of explanations about okay, Trump's contesting these votes from this county because of the time they were turned in, and I think a lot of this stuff was in Georgia, or it was in Pennsylvania mainly, is where he was filing most of the lawsuits, Arizona. But the way it was explained, and this was on Dan Crenshaw's podcast, so this isn't exactly like a beacon of liberalism that I'm sharing with you, but they were basically saying he's contesting 10 to 15,000 votes, but he lost by 80,000. So if they throw every one of those votes out, you still lost by 65,000.
Exactly.
So that was
right. They're just seeding the thought that, well, if we can get 10 to be proven to be false, then there's probably hundreds of thousands, and there's not.
Yeah. I mean, that whatever.
People think that when we do elections that we just pull equipment out of dark storage, pop it up, and have an election. That isn't the way it works. There's programming, there's testing. You talk about testing. We test all combinations of ballot measures and people that are on the ballots just to make sure they all print correctly, put them through all the tabulators we're going to use. They have to balance correctly, and we have to send copies to the state to prove that we are doing it correctly. I mean, there's a lot of checks and balances.
And you have to make sure those iPads are charged too, that you check in on, right?
Yes, absolutely. And actually they have a battery, so even if the power's off, it'll work.
We were talking about recording two sides amidst all the election things, and Vicki's very busy at the Benton County Election Commission, and we got to laughing because I did some early voting, and while I was voting in Fayetteville, this just goes to talk about how people, like we said, they go there to vote for Trump, or they go there to vote for Biden, or whatever, however they choose to vote. One thing, so like through 4-H that I learned how to do while I was at the Capitol was we had a voting machine, and they taught you like how the ballots worked and how it's important to always click next on the ballot, because if you don't select anything to vote, it'll double check and ask you if you want to vote. But a lot of times there's a second page. And there was a lady in one of the voting machines closer, not next to me because COVID, but kind of in the same row as me. She was like, Donald Trump is not on my ballot. Are you trying to rig this election? And one of the election commission people came by and just hit like the little over button, and it went to the next page. And she's like, well, why is Joe Biden listed before Donald Trump? And they're like, it's just how it's like listed. Like it's not an issue. And she was convinced that the election commission in Fayetteville was rigging the vote by putting Trump at the bottom so people would miss it.
It wasn't just her, dude. Like that was. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know. That's what I'm saying. And then I got home and I saw it on Facebook.
Yeah, or it's
other people were like, they put Trump at the bottom of the ballot. Da, 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 da. And I was like, what are you people talking about?
Yeah, there was that post.
Well, I'll tell you how that works.
Be sure to hit that arrow or you'll never find Trump. And it's like,
exactly.
Yeah. Do you want to know how that actually happens? Is every well, now that's a question to be answered by somebody else.
But that's my next question, but go ahead.
Whenever there's there are this bucket of balls, and they have numbers on them. A representative for each of the people running, or for the party that's running, will select a ball, and that is how they are listed on the ballot. And that is each individual county. So, for instance, in Benton County, Joe Biden was number 6 and Donald Trump was number 10. Well, the way the ballot worked out on programming, we can only have 6 on the first page, and 13 on the second page. Now, I'm telling you, as an election official, I would much rather had them on the first page or both on the second page. I sure didn't want to have to go around spending my day going, no, it's on the second page.
Yeah, that would have made life a lot easier.
We're not trying to rig an election.
Right.
But what's even worse is that that's county by county. So in Washington County, Biden was first on the ballot, and Trump was like, I don't know, 9th, 10th, something.
Mid of the second page.
Yeah. And so that was a whole nother bag of work for them to deal with.
This lady was mad. And that was after I'd watched them turn away 2 people for wearing, one group of people was wearing all their Trump stuff, and then another group out wearing all Biden stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, which of course, when they sent the Trump people away, everybody was like, yeah, you idiot. They sent the Biden people away. All the Trump people were like clapping and cheering. It's like they're going to get to come vote. Like they're not going to not vote. They just can't wear their Biden clothes.
Exactly.
Is that a rule? Like you can't promote
yes, it is
a candidate while you're voting or something. I mean,
yeah, that's actually called electioneering. It's a big fancy term. And within 100 feet of the main entrance of the election poll site, you cannot be wearing any paraphernalia.
And it's local candidates too. It's not just president or
gosh.
It's even measures.
What do you?
It's
like
even measures.
telling people not to wear a hog
hat
to a Razorback game. Come on, y'all.
Hey, you want to wear a hog hat? That's fine. They weren't on the ballot, but yeah, we have to send them away, and they're pissed. They're like, how dare you infringe on my First Amendment rights? And it's like, I'm sorry, but you still have to not wear that.
If you're hardcore enough, you're wearing your MAGA hat or your whatever Biden, I don't know what his slogan would be, but you're going to be upset if somebody tells you to take your hat off.
Well, we even went so far as to say elephants and donkeys.
Really?
We would have said libertarian, but I don't think they wanted to pay for an image.
Yeah. We don't have any. You can't brand us.
That's funny. So I guess we've went pretty deep into the whole election deal. That's one thought I had today. I was like, yeah, we had this was supposed to be the biggest election since like the early 1900s or the late 1800s or something like that. As far as voter turnout, is that right? Do y'all remember hearing that, or am I making that up? Or
it's huge voter turnout. I think up here in our county alone, we had something like 73% turnout.
Yeah, Washington County, we had almost 60% just early vote. I mean, the lines were longer to early vote than election day.
Yeah, election day we had nothing going on. We were just kind of sitting there going, "Where's the line?"
Well,
and that's kind of something I try to explain to people. Because, I ask people who are like, well, I just can't believe there's all these extra people voting for Biden. Well, there's a lot of people who don't vote in general, and that's kind of why we're in the situation that we're in. But there's a large number of people who have been very upset the past however long.
4 years, Isaac. It's been 4 years.
It seems like last year was so long.
Yeah.
For the
and the
past
8 years
4
before
years,
that, there was a whole another group of people that were mad.
Yeah.
And then the 8 years before that,
and
the people that are mad now.
Right.
Then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of like we talked about the pendulum. So now everybody that didn't vote 4 years ago was like, well, by gosh, I'm voting this year. And it's very clear to see that the majority of people voted for Joe Biden. Like, that's not hard to, not in Arkansas, but the majority of, I read an interesting statistic the other day and this is why I always support the Electoral College, but there are 3 counties, I think, in the whole country that if they all voted for one direction would not be outvoted by the rest of the populace. And it's like Los Angeles County, whatever county Miami is in Florida, and then I think Detroit. Maybe.
Don't believe everything you read.
I know that's not true, but it does put a little bit in perspective. When you look at the population of LA County, one county in California has almost as many people as the whole state of Arkansas in it.
But remember when you had those maps that talked about the counties that would swing? It's like counties don't vote, people do.
Exactly. Land doesn't vote, people do. Yeah, exactly. But it kind of puts in perspective about the Electoral College and why it's important because, well, Arkansas, our little population vote does not that our electoral college vote matters. our two votes that we get are 4. No, we just get 2.
No, we get 6.
Do we?
Yeah.
I thought we were.
I mean, it's on up there.
Well,
I think.
on up there compared to
It's on up there compared to Wyoming. I don't know.
California's 28 or however many.
Yeah, New York State 30.
But my point is that there's a lot of people who have been mad and upset the past 4 years that extremely dislike Donald Trump, but maybe didn't vote or I don't know. But when you have such a polarizing figure, and I think back to and the political atmosphere, we have such a polarizing figure, and you have two, kind of we talked about earlier, 2 distinct groups that are literally like polar opposites of each other. This is what happens, and it's just such a crazy thing to like see and experience.
Well, the lowest common denominator becomes an elected official.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the way it works. The problem comes in my opinion, way back is to gerrymandering, is that by gerrymandering and trying to have districts that are only Republican and only Democrat,
Right.
What happens is you become radicalized because they don't have to try and get a moderate vote.
Mm-hmm.
If we could do that more fairly, and I don't know the answer to that. If it was a simple answer, it would have already been done. Or maybe it wouldn't have been. I don't know. It's all about power and control anyway.
That's right.
But if it could be, it would be more centrist because they would have to appeal broad base instead of just to a Republican or a Democrat base.
Well, things are so radical and they are so tribal now that when you see kind of a bipartisan candidate, like a centrist, like, I was a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, just just from hearing her, like a couple of extended conversations she had on a couple of podcasts and just kind of following her, especially like, during the debates and stuff. But she was more of a, she wasn't, some of her policies may be in line with what Joe Biden wants to do, but she was more of a bipartisan type of candidate. And man, you would get on Twitter and the hardline Democrats would be ripping her apart. You would think she was like Trump's running mate or something, the way they would talk about her, and like that's kind of when, but then again, people would do the same thing if Trump had anybody even running against him in the primaries, they would have tore, the Trump people would have tore them apart, even though they're both supposed to be conservative and they're both supposed to be kind of trying to earn the same spot, but they want to fight for the same team or represent the same team, I guess.
But if you run against Trump, that means you're a puppet of the Democrats and that you're not really Republican.
You're not Republican enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's basically what they were saying about Tulsi. I mean, that was just, it was crazy.
Well, now I think you're kind of scratching the surface on 2 things. Number one, number one, she wasn't Republican enough because she was going against Trump. The alpha male, as he likes to call himself, right? I mean, he likes to say that he's the baddest male on the planet. Yeah. And so now you're having a woman run against him. Well, that's easy. It's like, well, we ain't going to have no woman up there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the unfair advantage or disadvantage. Because Stark and I have talked a lot too, or I think maybe even on this podcast, about how much we like Tulsi Gabbard. And it's just unfair. And not that out of politics, a couple weeks ago we talked about Sarah Fuller from Vanderbilt. I think it's the same situation. Is like, for whatever reason, we're just have our head in the sand about that. And it's just kind of silly to me because I think Tulsi Gabbard would have been a better president than Joe Biden and Donald Trump combined. But she doesn't have that backing or that support or from either direction because she's a woman, because she's not right enough, because she's not left enough. And it's just crazy that we'll overlook
she's too far right to
the
be
best
left,
candidate. Right. But it's crazy that we'll overlook, quote, the best candidate, pun intended, just because we're like, well,
Yeah.
she's not quite there.
She's never been hunting into the lodge with the guys. Yeah.
Is that like a Washington thing, or is that like is that a voter thing? You know what I mean? Like
that. Yeah. I would say that is a cultural thing.
Like that type of sexism,
That
honestly, it kind of has to be ingrained in these political parties a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, it has to be ingrained in all of us because we all want to. Let's face it. When you're interviewing somebody, you want to hire someone who looks like you, who acts like you. Now we can say we don't, but that's just obvious.
Well, our little monkey brain says, "Oh, I'm this way, they're that way, we're the same."
Right. So we can, hang out together and understand each other more. Where I think when it comes down to politics, it's that same old thing. You may say that you want more women or more people of color or more people of diverse cultures in politics, but when it comes right down to it, a person stands behind that voting machine and they look at themselves and go, that's who I want.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sark. Oh, I was just gonna say, not to solve like all the world's problems too, and not to women, of course, obviously, and people of color, but also like religion and politics.
Oh my gosh!
So, politicians are supposed to be a-religious, number one, and a lot of times they run on that, which I think is funny. But unless you are a Christian, you in the South are not going to win an elected position.
If you fake being a Christian.
If you fake, exactly.
Let's make sure.
If you claim that you're a Christian.
There you go.
But if you are Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, atheist, agnostic.
You better be north of the Mason-Dixon.
And even then, you might still get it because there's lots of Catholics in the Northeast. And that's who they like to elect into office. And that's so crazy to me that you landed free. Preface this, but it's just so funny that like our politics are old white dudes.
Well, again, we're a representative democracy.
Yeah.
And if you don't like who you voted in, the person you look at is in the mirror.
Vote them out.
Yeah. I mean, that's
crazy. This because
I was just that kind of leads me to like we talk about what kind of political situation we're in and what we have to deal with now. I mean, I've said it probably 100 times over the last week talking to other friends of mine or whatever, but I mean, like, we get what we deserve, because we don't hold these candidates accountable for anything. Like, they get elected and they get up there, and for the most part, doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, whatever, they forget about their constituents and they just toe the party line and they do what they have to do to kowtow to the lobbyist and to the special interest, and they don't represent us anymore. They represent us just enough to run a campaign to try and get reelected when they have to. And
I saw.
Do what?
Oh, I was just saying, I saw a really funny meme the other day that said, "We haven't tarred and feathered any politicians in a long time, and maybe that's the problem." It was an old. An old just.
Some people would say what happened the other day was kind of, I mean, not to make light, but that was like a modern day version of that. Like, some people would say I'm not backing up what
you're not some people. Yeah.
Right. But, they would say, hey, we were there to get their attention and this and that. And I don't know, like kind of what I saw when Congress reconvened, it's like they galvanized the Republicans and Democrats were like, okay, it's even more so it's us against them, or it's us and them. Maybe not us against them, but it's us and then it's them. And
right.
I don't really think it had
what
the
I've seen more in.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What they wanted from the insurrectionists, what they wanted, they didn't get. But what I've seen more in voters, which I find frustrating, and this is just as a voter myself, is that ideally what I want in a candidate is someone who can think and reason and decide what to give on and what to take on to make it better for their constituents. Ideally, I know that's pie in the sky dreaming. But what I don't like is when I see voters come in and they vote for, or someone who's talking about voting for a candidate based on one topic, whether it's taxes or abortion or whatever, one topic. That isn't what governance is. It's a lot of topics.
Right. And that's poor leadership, too. If you've got a candidate that just, it worked for him, but, if it's just build a wall and lock her up, what's really,
exactly.
What is your platform really, And I say that as a person that voted for the guy twice. I'll.
Has there been this much political unrest since Watergate?
No.
Is this are we back at, is this Watergate level even?
Yes.
On a stupid level. Not as serious as Watergate, but.
I feel like it's very much, I think it's actually more serious than Watergate. Watergate was just some bumbling fools decided to break into an office.
True.
And then had a president that would cover up whether he.
Gump.
But as for unrest, I think his excuse the pun, trumps more than Watergate. The last scandals that we've had, even Reagan wasn't without his scandals, but it wasn't impeachable.
True.
You look at Bill Clinton. Yeah, he lied to a grand jury, but would you rather be honest to Hillary and say, yeah, I screwed around with this lady, or would you just rather lie to the grand jury? I think I'd rather lie to the grand jury.
I'm not going to speak my piece about the Clintons.
So, those were minor things. I think what we're going through now is something I've never seen in my lifetime, and I've lived longer than both of you. So go ahead, Adam.
Well, you're right, and a lot of people would say that social media has a lot to do with kind of the unrest that we're experiencing, and that kind of leads into the fact that following the riots and the Capitol invasion and the protests, Trump, people have been calling for it for years, but he was finally suspended or kicked off most of it, Facebook and especially Twitter, his social media accounts. His Twitter account was suspended. Instagram and Facebook suspended his accounts. He even got suspended on Spotify, which I thought was hilarious. Somebody said, what's he going to do?
on Spotify?
That's creepy.
Not anymore. But somebody was like, what's he going to do? Listen to Eye of the Tiger and get too fired up and start another riot, But
what?
YMCA.
I just don't.
Oh, y'all didn't see
Spotify.
Another one bites the dust.
I guess
because that's the age we live in, Isaac.
I'm just a poor boy. Nobody loves me.
Oh my god. Well, I guess because
I'll be honest.
No, we will not let you go.
Let me be 100% honest. If I got kicked off Twitter, which I deactivated my Twitter account, if I got kicked off Facebook, that would suck. But
you rebel.
If I got kicked off Spotify, I would be pissed. That would ruin my day. I have to switch music streaming services and start my library all over. Y'all have no idea how big a deal that is. That would really, really suck.
Well, because you listen to Spotify exclusively in your truck.
Yeah,
all day, when you're at work, correct?
Yeah, it's either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's one or the other. But it's trending more and more away from Apple towards Spotify. But either way,
yeah. I guess because Facebook owns Spotify, maybe that's why he was kicked off, just as a joint.
I don't think. No, Facebook owns Instagram. I don't think Facebook owns Spotify. Do they?
I don't know who
maybe
owns Spotify.
They're just connected.
Yeah.
They're all, because if you when you share music off Spotify, you can share it to Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, your text messages, all that. So
Right.
I just kind of assumed they either had a partnership or were owned by Facebook.
So did you drop your Twitter account for some rebellious reason, or you just didn't like Twitter? Because I find Twitter annoying myself.
Man, I used to love Twitter. Like, this is 5-6 years ago, right? It was a very, very good medium. I mean, it was a legitimate news source, and it would get updated, and it would get things would get provided quicker via Twitter than anything else. I just got tired of it. I mean, and somebody had a
It's a cesspit.
It's awful. And I mean, there's still, even the good stuff you find on there, there's still somebody in that thread trying to bring it down to that level. You know what I mean? So just for my own,
Sure, it's just a scrum.
Yeah, for my own emotional sanity, I was like, I've had enough, you know? But I'll be honest, like, there are people that, you know, like Ron Paul got his Facebook account was suspended today, you know, and it seems like since
What was he saying? You know,
he said the only thing he posted on, now I don't know the content of the newsletter, but he said the only thing that he had posted today was a newsletter that he's been posting for like 17 years or something like that. You know, I guess he does a little newsletter every day.
Yeah, but of course, I'm always one of those, what's in the newsletter? Yeah, what's in the newsletter?
Yeah.
But, you know, when people talk about losing these accounts and it's a violation of their First Amendment, well, you know, it really, I hate to say it, but it isn't, because the First Amendment right is from the government and these are private companies. So you can still put your opinion out on the internet. They just don't have to provide you a stage to shout it from.
Well, right, and because the same people who scream about you're moving, like the thing about Twitter, you know, you're stifling my First Amendment, are also the same people who support like private business.
Right, that you don't have to bake that cake that I order because you don't agree with me ideology,
and I think that's what
my
people
ideology.
Don't realize is that Twitter is not a free space. That somebody owns that. You get to use it for free because of ads and how the internet works. But somebody owns Twitter, just like somebody owns Facebook, owns Instagram, owns Google, owns whatever. And it's their right to deactivate your account for whatever really they want to. And so for you to think that you're protected by your right of free speech is kind of silly, because that's not a government. It's not. We don't elect the president of Facebook. We elect the president of the United States.
We elected the president of Twitter.
Exactly, the Twitter president.
Yeah.
It was just on the twit. Quick jab.
Oh.
No, but no,
Isaac,
like
you
you
can
said,
never
something
come
about
back
the
to
social media
Rosebud
aspect.
after that.
I know.
Just blame it on me. It's
my
okay.
ID, my voice gets altered a little bit, so nobody.
Yeah,
It's Isaac Gauvey. No, go ahead.
that's why. Yeah.
But like coming from like the social media generation, the things that I see politically, you talk about like no gray area. I either see Trump as the devil, Trump is a godsend.
Yeah.
I see share and like this post for the Lord to carry Trump and type amen. Or I see everybody go to Trump's Twitter and comment #baby hands. Like I see.
You see, I see cats. I watch a lot of cat videos.
I just see like polar opposite. And it's always anyway. Recently, like political climate is such a joke to like my generation. When Mitch McConnell halted the $2,000 stimulus checks, people started like making memes of him like as a turtle, because I don't know,
because he looks like a turtle.
and now the popular thing was people were sending, because Venmo is a public money exchange service, and somebody found Mitch McConnell's Venmo.
Do you think you had to explain Venmo to us because we're old?
Well, no, but I just, for anybody that's listening, this is for the
okay.
I think I need a Venmo account.
But people were Venmoing Mitch McConnell And it's essentially like cyberbullying this politician, which not that he doesn't deserve it, but it's just funny to me because politics are, number one, that's where people, not just my generation, a lot of people are Facebook politicians.
Oh my gosh.
Facebook warriors, whatever.
Facebook bullies.
But that's the main source of info for a lot of people, and they don't go any further than the surface. And so, like my generation, we have all the knowledge of that's ever been discovered in the palm of our hand, in one way or another. It's a cell phone, a computer, a tablet, or whatever.
Is that why you're so
and
preachy?
We just take stuff for face value, and think it's the truth. Yes,
that's why he's almost 25.
I'm virtue signaling right now. That's right. I'm going back to a flip phone.
Not you, not you
I'm kidding.
specifically, but I take that back because being preachy on social media is not an age specific thing, you know.
Yeah, you're dang right.
Oh, no kidding.
I'm going to start daily. I'm going to start sharing memes that are the.
I do that all the time, Isaac. What are you talking about?
No, I mean the ones that are like typing or sharing like and type amen. And it's
yes.
different people.
Receive your blessings.
Holding like the Bible and the devil's like trying to get him.
Yeah,
I see some really good memes.
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about mine.
I don't guess they're memes. Actually, I think they are because they're funny, but I don't guess technically they're.
But don't you like my memes? I mean, I post them every day.
Your memes are good.
Okay, thank you. They're a little bit cutting, but still,
they're funny.
Y'all mentioned the fact that these are private companies, but there are people trying to make the argument that they control so much information and the sharing of that information to where these platforms have replaced like local broadcast news and things like that. You know what I mean? Like if you polled,
local broadcast news would have replaced the town square. You know, the evolution of social discourse. Yeah. But again, our news. Oh, I miss my newspaper. That tells me really I'm really old. But it's one of those where the evolution doesn't change the fact that you still have the right to free speech. They just don't have to amplify it. And that's where that would have to be settled out in the courts. Now, as for information, I know Google has a lot of information, but it's still just a search engine. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of search engines out there. You can use DuckDuckGo, and it doesn't even track you. See, now that just helped a lot of people on this podcast. But they just don't have to amplify it. You don't have the right to be given a megaphone.
But doesn't the fact that they give the user the megaphone make that platform what it is? You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like they're saying, sure. I mean, you would almost think that they're cutting off their nose to spite their face as far as.
Right. I mean, they got a lot of clicks from these people that were very angry. I mean, I don't know how many clicks they get from the stupid cat videos I watch. They get a lot of money from that. That's why it's gone on so long. But now that they feel that they somehow were complicit into what happened last week or to the cult of Trump doing what they did, I think that's when they realize, forget it.
Now, a lot of people would say, that's fine. I mean, I see your point there, but I think a lot of people would say, where were they at this summer when? And I understand the difference between the protest this summer, and I'm not talking riots. I'm talking protest. There was a different. The difference in the reason people were protesting this summer is a lot different than the reason people were in D.C. protesting last week. I mean, I don't want to get those confused at all. But at the same time, I would kind of say, man, there was some crazy stuff going on this summer. And there were people calling for continued violence and unrest. And I mean, it's out there, you know, and there were political leaders that said, hey, keep doing what you're doing. There were political leaders that have said, hey, find Trump supporters I believe it was Maxine Waters, said, if you see somebody out to dinner and they're a Trump supporter, you should harass them, and things like that.
It's like the Trump supporters are harassing people now. Yeah, it kind of goes both ways.
I mean, it's kind of, but I mean, and that's kind of a point that a lot of people have right now is, hey, where were y'all at when this stuff was going on? Because I understand, like,
sure,
we understand what happened last week was horrible, and it showed our nation. It kind of showed our true colors and where we're really at in just a horrible light. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, that's not the first time something like this has happened recently. And now you decide.
And it's always one of those. Yeah, we always do that. I mean, we do. We kind of go, but what about blah, blah, blah? What about this? What about that? And there's an argument to be made that if, of course, we've kind of danced around this subject, but if those people storming the Capitol would have been of a different color or ethnicity, there would have been a heck of a lot more tasers and rubber bullets and real bullets and tear gas. Let's just go ahead and go with that. Because a lot of it over the summer, they were protesters, but they were out past curfew. And what do we start doing? Unleash the hounds. So there was a little bit of a level of attack that was different than what happened last Wednesday. And that's what really got me last Wednesday, is realizing these people basically walked in. And, there were some people who died, yes, and there were quite a few injuries. But I saw people just walking in. I kept on thinking they're gonna stop this because that's their job. And then you realize they didn't. Now, they were outmanned, and there's a whole lot of reasons for that. But wow, I was just shocked by that.
Yeah, and I think, again, in the spirit of our podcast, there's two sides of everything.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, give us a listen, like and follow, all those good things. The things that happened in the summer, tragic and unfortunate, all of it, because while I think the idea behind it was wholesome and good and for something that's worth fighting for, whole cities, I say whole cities, neighborhoods, I guess like Minneapolis, what was the city that everybody was talking about?
Portland.
Well, that's a different story. Those people are nuts.
Legalized marijuana.
Legalized everything.
Yeah. Legalized.
But there was a lot of stuff going on in the summer.
Yeah, there you go.
With the issue is when we transform from a protest to a riot. Protesting, fine. That's
your First Amendment.
You're all fine and good.
Absolutely.
And I think protests are important. But in the step that you go when either side initiates or escalates to violence, whether it's the protester or the establishment or vice versa, we can't be civil about things because we're conditioned to believe one way, and that's our way to believe. And we refuse to see the ideals of something else in a way that we see it. And that's what we've said tribalism several times. And that's what has drove that wedge so deep this is deeper than Republican or Democrat.
Sure.
And it's deeper than it. It's just so strange to me that, like you said, Vicki, if this would have happened, if this would have been, quote, a BLM function, we were very fortunate in Arkansas to have several successful, I know in Northwest Arkansas, BLM rallies. I don't even call
it. Fayetteville was wonderful.
I wouldn't even call it a protest because it was just a show of support. And
yes,
and it worked out really well. I know in Little Rock they had a couple issues with the interstate. Those people are idiots anyways. If you're going to stand on an interstate, regardless of what you serve, you should probably be hit.
It's like there's a reason they tell people go play in the road. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
That's called a speed bump.
I don't have any holdback for you if you're going to try to block an interstate. I don't care if a big truck runs you over. You're an idiot. But what happened at the Capitol, like I said earlier, if they stay behind the barricade, fine. The protests in the summer, when you start looting cities, and I get that was a response to maybe of how things were escalated,
How
things were
heavy-handed
going.
they responded.
Exactly. And on both ends. I think both ends probably responded. It was emotional. It was touchy.
Well, I think when you go from, as you're pointing out, when you go from an organized protest to mob rule,
Yes.
there is a difference. And I was surprised even last Wednesday. I don't know which news media you were watching, but I saw people walking away from the Capitol pushing their walkers and their oxygen tanks. It's like, what in the hell are you doing?
There was I did.
I mean, if I'm going to die soon, that isn't the way I want to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember, man. I can't remember what it said, but there was a meme of the woman in the Capitol, and it was like, you mean, and it was basically saying like they just let these people in here, because it was like, you mean to tell me this lady forced her way through the security? And I mean, this lady looked like she could barely get a bag of Doritos open by herself, you know.
Hey, those can be challenging.
It's just crazy to me.
True.
My thing is too, like I look at it from both sides, and we'll say for sake of argument,
plug.
you have protesters and you have police. Yeah. Let's dodge this bullet. Ha, 2 plugs in a row.
Well, there are two sides to everything.
So you have protesters and you have the police. We're just going to keep them anonymous. We're going to say protesters and police. The police are already super hyper aware and ready because they think, okay, there's a protest. This has a chance to turn violent. We need to be prepared for this. So they're already a little on edge for reasons. We'll just,
except for Trump voters.
well, exactly. Yeah. And I think that was because there was a lack of police, but that's another story. And then you have the protesters who see the police and they're like, oh, the police are here. They're going to
come down with a hammer.
Exactly. Oppress us. And so they're anxious and the police are anxious. And I think it's easy to misinterpret, hey, you need to get back as a, hey, they're not going to let us get over here. And then it just kind of spreads. Like if you take one match and you light it, it'll burn out. But if you take a match and throw it in a box, they're all going to spark up. And so I think it's the same mentality. And I think that's a lot of what happened over the summer. I think everybody was just on edge, but this was just, as much as, again, I'm not going to wear my conspiracy hat. I don't think the Capitol Police expected them to break through the barricade and get into the Senate. I don't think they were prepared for that. And I don't think they were anticipating it. I don't think they were like,
Capitol
no, these Trump supporters, they're.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We lost you. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I don't think Capitol Police were like, I really thought they just thought the people would listen to them because they're the police and
Blue Lives Matter. They're all carrying those flags.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was that's one of the first things
that proved a fact.
Yeah, when all that happened, I sent a picture to James and Finch from Twitter rant, and I was like, dude, what happened to Blue Lives Matter? You know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what we learned last week is you would think the Capitol would be under pretty heavy guard. I think we learned that it's full of rent-a-cops. And if something bad went down, they all just looked at each other like, what in the hell are we supposed to do now? And then it was kind of a self-preservation deal from there. Like, this is crazy.
Well, because
they were probably spectators,
so that's another thing.
Just like us. Like, they were like, this is crazy. What do we do right now?
I hope
they were not.
I hope that's what happened. Yeah, I hope that's what happened because when I saw the one that had the Make America Great Again hat, I really have my doubts.
Here's the thing, too, like you said about the Capitol Police, the rent-a-cops. So, like, Washington, D.C. is not a state, but they do have a police force. But the officers at the Capitol are not, from what I remember, are not like DCPD. They are essentially like security officers.
They're like docents in a museum.
Because you have the Secret Service.
Yep.
And, you know, you don't really need a police force when you've got, you know, the rooftops covered.
Bond.
So
James Bond.
Exactly. But, and like you said, Vicki, you know, when they're showing pictures of Capitol Police wearing MAGA hats, It doesn't look great.
Taking
No, the
selfies
optics were very bad on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah. And so it's just such a strange thing to where, like, it's just crazy. Like, to think that what we are living through right now is even happening. Like, you read about this stuff in other countries and you're like, oh yeah, they're going through another, like, revolution. Like, their leaders are just so corrupt. And, like, that happens. What happens in America is just a bunch of crackheads who didn't have anything to do, or just waving their MAGA flags and Trump train, and then they broke down the Capitol and took a picture at somebody's desk. Like, I just don't understand why. Like,
and they're really surprised they couldn't get back on the airplanes to fly home.
Right.
Just wow.
Yeah, like, you're put on
they can't understand why the FBI keeps calling. You know?
Yeah,
exactly.
why?
And it's just so strange to me that we a couple of podcasts ago, Vicki and I were talking about education and just how, like, there's a lack of emphasis on educating people. And I think that's a lot of the root of our problem is, like, we put people through school so they can take a test, but we don't have people who can think critically or even free think anymore. And that is what has led us to the split that we're at currently. And I mean, you've seen the past year has been the craziest year of I'll say collectively, like, our lives, with a pandemic, with new mask mandates, with curfews, with presidential turmoil, with all politics in turmoil, with laws getting passed and this and that. It has been a wild 2020 was literally this weird. It was not like anything we've ever been through before.
And we were worried about a zombie apocalypse.
Exactly. Frankly, the zombies would have been easier. I've seen a lot of Walking Dead. I can handle that. But it's so strange that we're getting to see, like, it's just wild to me.
I want to finish up, like, I want to focus a little bit more on the social media deal. Like, I kind of think for us to come back together, we have to get away from that stuff. We have to, like y'all said earlier, like however you believe, you just find that echo chamber for that subject or that issue, and you get in that echo chamber, and that's where you stay, you know, instead of looking at different sides of things, or looking at multiple issues or whatever. Like, I just feel like we're never going, because when you get on social media, you kind of surround yourself with like-minded people. So it doesn't matter what platform it is kind of an echo chamber, you know, and you just get on there and you want to like and read posts from people that think the way you do. And somebody made an interesting point today in a video I was watching, and they basically said, like, you know, around 2014, 2015, like, Twitter was in trouble. Like, their user base was shrinking, and they had kind of peaked, or so we thought. And then Trump entered the picture, or that election cycle kind of just really, really ramped things up and got Twitter back to being just important again in the public consciousness. And a lot of that was based on the fact that Trump didn't trust the media, which I think the media, not saying Trump's right, but the media definitely has a part to play in this because of the way they've covered him. You know, I mean, they've kind of been, I mean, say what you want, this thing's been great for ratings, and it doesn't matter if you're CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or whoever. Like, those entities do not want to give up what they've been benefiting through this news all this time. You know, they're not going to give up the revenue that they've gained and all that. But I mean,
but as you pointed out, I think you pointed out a very good subject is that when we get on social media, we tend to have like-minded people. Mm-hmm. And so as I'm watching these people storm the Capitol and they're like, there's no way Trump could have lost this election. You realize the only thing they have been listening to is stuff talking about how great he is, all these people that are following, that he's the God's gift to being a president. Look at all the great things he's done. That's the only thing they have heard.
Yeah.
So, of course, in their world, he should have won by a landslide. So the thing has to be rigged.
Like you said, the media has demonized Trump on one side, and then you have other news sides that have glorified, just like you said, Vicki. You have, or like even I said earlier, you have Devil Trump and you have Jesus Trump, and like you said, Stark, for the ratings of, I think, like you said, like Twitter. I remember when Twitter was, I was in high school, but we'd all got Twitter and then we quit using it because it wasn't there was nothing on it. Wasn't any fun.
128 characters.
Yeah, and it was just dying. And then like now I think about Twitter, and it is. I'm probably gonna delete mine, Stark. I use it to keep up with sports more than anything, but
that's what I used it
all
for.
Social
but
media
it got taken over by everything else.
Yeah, all my brother deleted his Facebook just because he's tired of it, and he said he checked his phone. I think he said like 18 times yesterday. He would just look at his phone and be like, "What am I looking at my phone for?" Like, I'm usually on Facebook, and then he would put his phone back in his pocket. And so we're just so conditioned to look at that and see, and it's just, I mean, that essentially that's how Trump was elected, was social media, how he gained any momentum at all, and ultimately,
and he's not the only one either,
No, yeah, for sure. But I think too, it definitely played into his downfall because the more he tweeted, the more people were like,
he's a little crazy.
Did he really say that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he'd be like, oh, surely that's a fake Donald Trump account. And nope. That's the real Donald Trump right there. He actually tweeted that.
What is the president doing on Twitter at 3:30 in the morning? And
exactly, like, dude, go to sleep.
Yeah,
that Big Mac really upset his stomach.
Yeah, I don't know how many times.
Sorry,
that's true. I don't know how many times I've heard somebody say over the last 4 years, like, man, the economy is by what metrics we're given, the economy looks like it's in good shape. We don't have any overseas conflicts. This isn't going on. This isn't going on. You know what I mean? It's like if he would just stay off Twitter, like people would probably think, man, this guy's doing a great job, but I mean,
or at least maybe not a great job, but even a better job, an okay job.
Yeah. I mean, even his biggest detractors would have to, if you're just looking at things like, economic bullet points and things like that, and unemployment, and, but then, you could look at that stuff and say, that's what the president's supposed to do. Like, and I know there's things that they're giving credit for that they really don't deserve. They catch a lot of credit and a lot of blame that doesn't have anything to do with them, and they love the credit and they pass the blame off to somebody else. But, but then he's on there and he's calling somebody a horse face, and it's like, that's what the news cycle is about the next 3 days. It's not about how the economy's doing. It's, Trump called Stormy Daniels a horse face or whatever, or
and how dare he call an ex-girlfriend that? I mean, that's just rude.
Right. I mean, she, never mind.
Yeah, let it go. Let it go, Stark. Let it go.
Yeah. It's a family show. But either way.
Really? Dang.
No. But, if, like, it's almost like he can't get out of that echo chamber because he has to appease his supporters, and that's how he does it.
Well, that's his persona.
Because the media hates him, and that's the only way he can.
But do we ever know? Will we ever know who the real Donald Trump is? Because you're right, it's a persona, it's an act. I don't even know if he knows who he is.
Not at this point.
No.
No, I don't think so either.
You can say what you will. Not that I would ever say he's intelligent.
No, I wouldn't do that. No.
He's
But he picked a lot of fights he didn't have to. I'll have to go with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing.
And he would pick fights with Republicans,
Yeah, for nothing.
Anybody that even questioned or maybe had like a different thought than him. It was, you brought up, we briefly touched on the presidential debates. That first debate, I was pretty excited because I was like, oh, first presidential debate. I really like politics. I enjoy things that happen in the Capitol.
You'll outgrow it.
I like reading bills and stuff.
Yeah.
Like
I think this one broke me. Maybe you'll get to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm like watching the debate and I'm thinking, okay, both of these guys have people who write their speeches for them that go over.
I don't think anybody writes Donald's speeches.
I don't think so either. And they go over their points and they're going to talk about their points and it's just going to be interesting and it's just going to be I don't know why I thought it was ever going to be nice. And I watched about 5 minutes of it. And then I was like, is this it? Like, are other countries allowed to watch this? I was really hoping it was closed caption just for the US. Because the thought of another country seeing that and being like,
yeah, that's who we want to be like.
Like, what does America got?
You thought you were watching a
like,
bad lip reading video, but then you were like, holy crap, this is real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I was like, geez, like, what is, like, if this is the best we got, then maybe we need to do some reevaluation.
Yeah.
But, Rome wasn't built in a day, so to speak.
Oh, well, let's not talk about Nero then, huh?
Rome had nothing but great leaders.
Oh, that's terrible. Well, they could play a fiddle.
They could do something.
All right, so
not to completely shift politics.
Go ahead. We got 3 minutes left in this call. Hurry up.
I want to share an interesting update with you. Tom Brady has beaten 17 different teams in the playoffs, which means he's beaten more teams than any other quarterback has total wins in playoff history.
Wow.
That's just another plate on the GOAT belt.
That's right.
That's one of the little side plates, like on his championship belt, I mean, I
think so too. On one side of his rings.
That's right.
I think he's animatronic.
Something like that.
I think he's just been replaced, little parts here and there until he's just a machine, not a man. Plus, he's vegan.
Stark, you want to close this out?
Well, I mean, Finch isn't here to do that for us, but man, this was fun. I enjoyed it. I hope we can edit all this together because it's going to be crazy. But thank y'all for doing this. Vicki, it was nice to finally get to visit with you. And
yeah, anytime.
You can check Vicki and Isaac's podcast out. They usually drop episodes on Fridays, I think. And unlike us,
Fridays at 10 a.m.
They are very consistent. And check out their podcast, Two Sides of Everything. And it's definitely worth a listen. But
thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Sarge.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all for doing this. And I mean, like I said, don't hate us. We're just here to run our heads a little bit and trying to make sense of this crazy world. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch y'all next time. Thank you for listening to the Dodge That Bullet podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search for DTB Pod or Dodge That Bullet podcast. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at DTB Pod. We also have a new YouTube channel up. Just search for DTB Pod or Dodge That Bullet podcast. And finally, if you want to check out our website, it is dtbpod@podbean.com. And if you want to send us an email for any reason, it is dtbpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, guys, to check out Isaac and Vicki on the Two Sides of Everything podcast. You can find that on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also check out our friends James Isom and John Finch on the Quitter Rant podcast. Just search for Quitter Rant. You can get that on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. Once again, thank y'all so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Love you.